inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We completed the events between the Battle of Khandaq or the Battle of Trench and the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. And this Treaty of Hudaybiyah is where we had stopped, essentially, that after the Prophet ﷺ had completed in the 6th year of the Hijrah all of the expeditions and all of the tribes that he needed to deal with, those that had either attempted to attack the Muslims, those that had previously betrayed or attacked the Muslims, or those whom there was some imminent danger. The Prophet ﷺ dealt with them thoroughly, and we covered several of the 12 or 14 total expeditions that the Prophet ﷺ sent. And in this year, in the 6th year after the Hijrah, in the month of Dhul Qa'dah, so almost towards the end, the second to last month, the Prophet ﷺ, he wakes up one day and he says that he has had a dream. And he tells his companions that I've had a dream, and in this dream, I saw myself shaving my head, and some of you were shaving, some of you were shortening your hair, and we had performed Umrah. لَقَدْ صَدَقَ اللَّهُ رَسُولَهُ الرُّؤْيَا بِالْحَقِّ in Surah Al-Fath. And by the way, Surah Al-Fath, as we'll cover over the next few sessions, almost all of it directly relates to the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, even though it was revealed after. And usually that's how the Quran is with events, that after the event is over, then there are ayat or verses revealed. Same way with Badr and Uhud and Khandaq and all of the other important battles of the Madani period especially. And so here Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentions at the end of Surah Al-Fath that Allah has indeed made that vision, that dream come true. What is that dream that is going to come true? لَا تَدْخُلُنَّ الْمَسْجِدَ الْحَرَامِ, that you'll enter al-Masjid al-Haram, you'll enter Mecca, آمِنِينَ, in a state of peace. مُحَلِّقِينَ رُؤُوسَكُمْ, having shaved your head. That's a sign that you completed your Umrah, right? Because that's the last act that you do, is you either shave or you either shorten your hair. It's the last thing you do to leave the state of Ihram. لا تخافون فعلم ما لم تعلموا فجعل من دون ذلك فتحا قريبا. We'll cover the details of these ayat inshallah later. The point being, this dream is mentioned in the Quran specifically. And for the companions, this was not only big news, this was exciting news, because they had, those that are from Mecca, the Muhajirun, they've been waiting for years now. And it's been 6 years almost for many of them, some of them 7 or 8, because they came before the Prophet ﷺ. And for some of them less than that, but think about it, it's your hometown, it's where you grew up. And it's very different from us, because the way the world is today, you're used to moving. You move from place to place, and you still have the chance to go back. But especially those, even from amongst us, our friends or family, those that come from an area where they can't go back to, it hurts even more. You could be from a place and you simply didn't have the chance to go back, but you come, and may Allah protect the lands of the Muslims, but many of the Muslim lands, there's problems, wars, conflicts. We see all around the world, literally it's hard to pinpoint a country where things are not safe for people to go back. Things are destroyed. And so that sense, that longing, that desire, that I wish I could go back, I wish I could see my village, I wish I could see my people, the roads, a person falls in love with all of that. And so for them, it's going back home, that's one. But then for them, and especially for the Ansar, it's going to actually do Umrah. And Umrah with the Prophet ﷺ. Because their Islam, now there's salah, there's zakah, hijab is there, fasting Ramadan is there, all of that is there. But the one thing that they used to do even before becoming Muslim, tawaf around the Kaaba and seeing Hajj and seeing the people coming, and that whole experience is gone. So obviously they're excited, the Ansar are excited, the Muhajirun are excited, and the Prophet ﷺ, he tells them that, get ready and we will leave for Umrah. And obviously this was something that our preparation for Umrah is completely different for a number of reasons. The first being that our Umrah, the actual journey is actually the smallest part of it. So if you, once you're there, you spend 8 or 9 or 10 or however many days you're spending there, but the actual journey is maybe a day for us. And if you're in Europe or anywhere, Africa or Asia, it's not even a day. It's a few hours, a 4-hour flight, 6-hour, 8-hour flight, and that's it, you're there. But for most people, the actual journey for Hajj or Umrah was the major part of the Hajj or Umrah, in the sense that you spent more time in the journey. More time was spent in the actual journey. So the preparations have to be there because you have to have food with you, you have to, and then animals to sacrifice, hadi, animals that would be sacrificed there. The Prophet ﷺ, as we'll come to, he makes it a point to ensure that the Muslims have plenty of that. Not only because to show the Quraysh that they're coming for Umrah, and they're not coming for a war. This is very extremely important because it could be misunderstood. If that's misunderstood, a war could ensue. And so it has to be known that we're coming for Umrah. The proof for Umrah is that these are the camels, 70 camels that the Prophet ﷺ had prepared that he would take as hadi. These would be sacrificed and these would be distributed to the poor. And so that entire preparation is now beginning. And it's not just the Muslims of Medina, but also the Muslims outside of Medina. So the A'rab, as they're called, the Bedouins that are small pockets around Medina that have now accepted Islam, the Prophet ﷺ said everyone, or he encouraged everyone to join. Not everyone went, but many did. These people, the A'rab, these Bedouins of these small tribes around Medina, many of them lied to the Prophet ﷺ. And Allah Azza wa Jal mentions this in Surah Al-Fath as well. سيقول لك المخلفون من الأعراب شغلتنا أموالنا وأهلنا فاستغفر لنا. That some of these people are going to come to you, some of these A'rab, some of these Bedouins, and they'll say that we were busy because of our families and because of our jobs, because of wealth. In other words, no one to look after our family, no one to look after our animals, our business and whatnot. And Allah Azza wa Jalla says, يَقُولُونَ بِأَلْسِنَتِهِمْ مَا لَيْسَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ. These are a people that they're not true in what they say. They say something else, or rather what their tongues say is not what their hearts have inside of it. بَلْ ظَنَنْتُمْ أَنْ لَنْ يَنْقَلِبَ الرَّسُولُ وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِمْ أَبَدًا. But rather these people, they think that the Messenger of Allah and the Muslims will never come back. وَزُيِّنَ ذَلِكَ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ وَظَنَنْتُمْ ظَنَّ السَّوْءِ وَكُنْتُمْ قَوْمًا بُورًا. This is an ideology. زُيِّنَ ذَلِكَ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. It's beautified in your hearts. وَظَنَنْتُمْ ظَنَّ السَّوْءِ. And your minds are filled with evil thoughts. وَكُنْتُمْ قَوْمًا بُورًا. You are to be, or you have become, a people, a nation, or a group that is destroyed because of what they did. So they genuinely thought the Muslims will go, the Quraysh will fight, Muslims will be finished. They wanted no part in that. And so these are the people that stayed behind out of hypocrisy. Others stayed behind due to some excuses. Obviously the women stayed behind, the children, the elderly, the sick, all of those stayed behind. But of those that got ready, 1,400 people. And you can notice now that the number of the Muslims is getting larger and larger. 1,400 that are just going, and that's not even everyone, because that's a sign of what? Larger numbers mean what? Spread of Islam. Yeah, because you can't, it's not just that there was a splurge of people who are ready to go out. It's obviously people are trickling into Islam, and as people trickle into Islam, those people are now going out with the Prophet ﷺ. And so he left from Medina ﷺ on Monday. This was the first of Dhul Qa'dah, the 6th year after the hijrah, and he drew lots between his wives, and Salama radiallahu anha. And this is important because she plays an extremely pivotal role at Hudaybiyah. Her name came out, and so she went with the Prophet ﷺ. And he left Numayla ibn Abdullah al-Laythi and Abdullah ibn Maktoum, two of them, to watch over Medina and to ensure that the Muslims had their affairs taken care of. The Prophet ﷺ, he did not take any weapons initially. And so there seems to be a contradiction because some narrations obviously will mention weapons, some do not mention weapons. But the reality is that initially he did not take, as Ibn Ishaq says, he didn't take any weapons initially, إِلَّا سِلَاحَ الْمُسَافِرِ, except for the weapons that a traveler carries. So that used to be usually a sword sheathed in its proper cover, because you obviously need that. There could be bandits, there could be robbers, there could be something harmful on the way. Other than that, there's no preparation for war. And we said 70 camels. Of those camels, ironically, was the camel of Abu Jahl, way back in Badr, that the Prophet ﷺ, that the Muslims had gotten in the spoils of war. Of that was Abu Jahl's camel as well. And the Prophet ﷺ, he reached Dhul Hulayfa. Dhul Hulayfa is the name of the miqat of the people of Medina. The miqat basically means that's the point where you begin your ihram from. So depending on where you're coming from Mecca, because you could come from the south, north, east, west, then your miqat point where you make ihram from is different, depending on where you're coming from. So if you're going from Medina, which most of us, we end up going from Medina, because if you go to Medina first, you spend some time there, and then you're heading to Mecca, it's going to be via Dhul Hulayfa. Here the Prophet ﷺ, he stopped and he prayed Dhuhr Salah, and he prayed 2 rak'ahs. And here, this is where the difference of opinion comes. Should you pray 2 rak'ahs when you enter the state of ihram? Should you or should you not? It's a question. Should you pray 2 rak'ahs or do you have to pray 2 rak'ahs if you enter the state of ihram? No. A lot of people think you have to pray, and that can cause great difficulty if you're with a group. Times are tough, and at the miqat there's rush. You don't have to pray 2 rak'ahs, but is it recommended to pray 2 rak'ahs? Yes? Everybody say yes? Yeah, if situation were, so that's also differed upon. Is it even recommended or not? Because did the Prophet ﷺ pray the 2 rak'ahs for ihram, or did he pray them because Dhul Hulayfa in and of itself was a sacred place, and the virtue of the place of Dhul Hulayfa? So if you're doing your ihram from Dhul Hulayfa, you pray 2 rak'ahs. But what if it's from other than Dhul Hulayfa? Here you have 2 camps of scholars, and they debate whether it is preferred or not. But they agree that if it's 2 rak'ahs that's prayed, for example, after Dhuhr, after Maghrib, for example, then that is permissible. And so he prayed 2 rak'ahs there, and he called for the hadi, and فَقَلَّدَهُ. He ensured that the hadi, the animals that are to be sacrificed, are adorned. And they used to be adorned with garlands and other things. Essentially, most of us are unaware because we don't ever go to Umrah or Hajj with animals or even Udhiyah. But what it used to be is that an animal that's specified, that this animal is for Udhiyah, meaning the Qurbani, the slaughter in the days of Dhul Hijjah, or for the one doing Hajj or for the one doing Umrah, if they intend to make this as a sacrifice, then they put something in the neck of the animal, tie a ribbon, a piece of leather, something, to make sure that it's marked out that this is for specifically to be sacrificed. And the question is, why do you need to do that? Why do you need to mark? Yeah. Yeah, that's very good. So the first thing is that the Prophet ﷺ, he wanted that when you see all of this hadi, you see 70 camels, all of them with their garlands and with their adornments. They've obviously, you can see that these are dedicated people used to come. These aren't a people at war, these are a people that are there for performing Umrah, and these are animals they're going to sacrifice. And they respected that. But the second thing is that not only because of that, if someone, if you lose an animal or if someone wishes to steal even, it's the idea is that this is an animal that's dedicated for udhiyah. So you know if it's lost or it's dedicated for hadi, meaning for sacrifice, whether it's udhiyah or not, you know what the purpose is for this animal. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he performed that, and he put on his ihram, and he began his talbiyah, labbaik Allahumma labbaik from labbaik Allahumma umrah from Dhul Hulayfa there. And he intended to send Sufyan, or Busr ibn Sufyan al-Khuza'i, he intended to send him as a scout. Because now the question is, you need someone to go forth and see, because per the usual custom, there should be no issue. Because anyone can come and perform Umrah. And specifically in the month of Dhul Qa'dah. Does anyone know why in the month of Dhul Qa'dah? Why can anyone come in Dhul Qa'dah to perform Umrah? It's the sacred months. So there's 4 sacred months. There's Dhul Qa'dah and Dhul Hijjah and not Ramadan, Muharram and Rajab. Yeah. So there's Ramadan is usually, it's sacred, but it's not one of those Ashhurul Hurum. And so in Dhul Qa'dah, because it's the beginning of the Hajj season and people are coming for Hajj obviously, and obviously Dhul Qa'dah is from the sacred months, and the Quraysh, they had a rule that anyone that comes to do Umrah, even if the Quraysh are at war with them, even if they're at war with them, they're allowed to come to do Umrah, because the Kaaba is not the property of Quraysh. And they understood that themselves. It's not ours as a people. The Kaaba and Masjid al-Haram, it's only that the Quraysh oversee it, but it's from the legacy of Ismail. And it's for the people of, it's for everyone. It's just how, similar to how we say the masjid does not belong to anyone. Someone could be overseeing it, could be in charge of an aspect of it, but the masjid doesn't physically belong to any person. It's not registered to a person's ownership. The masjid is for the Muslims. And so similarly, the haram is for the Muslims. Even the Quraysh understood that. Now, so they shouldn't allow the Muslims to come in. But here's the problem. What happens if they allow the Muslims to come in? So there's a fear, obviously, that now the Muslims are coming in, and if they come in and they do Umrah and they leave, already the Muslims, the way the tide is going for the Muslims is that the Muslims are looking stronger and stronger. And this will make the Quraysh look weaker. So they decided that they gathered in the Darul Nadwa and they said, we are not going to let the Muslims perform Umrah. This will not happen. And they began to send out, or they began to talk about who should be sent out. And the Prophet ﷺ, he hasn't received this news yet. This is simply Busr ibn Sufyan reaching Mecca, learning of these things. He's understanding what's going on, there's discussions, and he's still there. Meanwhile, the Muslims are still near Medina because they've just left Medina. And here, the famous incident of Abu Qatada radiallahu anh occurs. Abu Qatada radiallahu anh, he says that we went with the Prophet ﷺ on the day of Hudaybiyah, and everyone entered ihram, but I did not. We're unsure why he did not, but most likely he had an excuse, or he was doubtful of whether he'd be able to enter or not. So he said, "Ahrama ashabuhu wa lam uhrim." They entered the state of ihram, but I didn't. And on the way there, all of a sudden, one of the scouts came to us and they told us that there's a small group that is possibly headed for the Muslims. And this is at the place of Ghayqa. Ghayqa was a place of a famous well for one of the tribes there. And so the Prophet ﷺ sent some of us there, and we went. A group of us, we went to deal and see what's happening. And there we saw a himar wahshi. Everyone knows what a himar is, right? What's a himar? A donkey. What's a himar wahshi? A zebra. That's a very intelligent answer, because usually there's a huge controversy that because of this hadith, that is it permissible to eat donkeys or not. And himar wahshi, people say it's a wild donkey, because wahshi means wild, they think, and himar means donkey. But a himar wahshi is not a wild donkey, it's a zebra. And that's what the Arabs used to call it. So they saw a himar wahshi, they saw a zebra, and now obviously some of them are in ihram, or most of them are in ihram except for him. And he said they began, or I asked them, I said, give me my bow and arrow. And they said, no, we won't give it. Because when you're in ihram, you can't do what? You can't hunt. And you also, if you're helping the hunter, you can't help the hunter as well. And so he said no. So he said, I got off from my horse, I took my bow and arrow, I rode my horse, and I successfully hunted this zebra. And when it came time to eat, before we went back, some of them said, no, we can't eat. Why can't they eat? Because you're in the state of ihram. But then how do you eat anything if you're in the state of ihram? You can't just become a vegetarian just for the state of ihram. You still, if meat is served, you can eat meat. So they differed amongst themselves. Should we eat or should we not eat? Because this is meat that was hunted. So some of them ate. They said that no, it's only that we can't hunt. We can eat the meat that's hunted, obviously. How else would we eat? And others said no. And so they went back to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ said, eat. And he said, bring for me as well and give it to your companions. And so they gave it to others and they all ate. And he said, إِنَّمَا هِيَ طُعْمَةٌ أَطْعَمَكُمُوهَ اللَّهُ. This is a food that Allah has gifted with you, so eat it. And now while this incident is happening, the messenger obviously comes back and he tells the Prophet ﷺ that, Ya Rasulullah, Quraysh has learned of your coming. And فَخَرَجَتْ مَعَهَا الْعُوذُ الْمَطَافِيلِ, that they've come out with عوذ is what the Arabs used to call for camels that are giving milk. So these are camels that are valuable, obviously. And if you've left with them, and you've left with al-matafil, is the mother who has young children. And so they meant the camels, but by matafil, as Ibn al-Athir says, they meant that their women are also out now. So they're coming out with everyone. They've decided women, children, animals were coming out. قَدْ لَبِسُوا جُلُودَ النُّمُورِ. They've literally worn their leopard skins. And it's not that they actually wore leopard skins, but the Arabs would say that when the leopard, because it's sneaky and it loves to hunt and it hides and then it attacks you out of nowhere, similarly the Arabs used to say if someone is getting ready for you, they'd say قَدْ لَبِسُوا جُلُودَ النُّمُورِ. And they've made a pact amongst themselves. They're not going to let you enter Mecca at any cost. And they've sent Khalid ibn al-Walid, the best of them, to go forth to be at the forefront of their army. He's come out with a few hundred horsemen, and he's ready to stop you before you even get to their army. Now, obviously, the Prophet ﷺ, he's not prepared for war mentally. Obviously, there was a possibility, because the reason why he did, Umar was actually radiallahu anhu, the one that at Dhul Hulayfa, he said to the Prophet ﷺ that, Ya Rasulullah, we don't have any weapons except for the weapons of a traveler. And what if we're attacked? And so the Prophet ﷺ then commanded, and he said that we should leave with weapons. And so weapons were brought from Medina, and then the Muslims, they ensured that they were armed, and then they left. Now obviously when the Prophet ﷺ finds this out, he's shocked. And so he says, Ya wayha Quraysh. And wayh is, it's translated as woe, but it's a little bit more deeper. It's almost where you're feeling bad for someone, you're feeling sorry for someone. There's an element of mercy, as if to say that, what is Quraysh thinking? What are they really thinking? That لَقَدْ أَكَلَتْهُمُ الْحَرْبِ, that war has literally eaten them up, because all they can think of is war. مَاذَا عَلَيْهِمْ لَوْ خَلُّوا بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ سَائِرِ النَّاسِ. If they let me go and let me deal with other people, if Quraysh would leave this, if other than Quraysh, they were to attack me, the Arabs would attack me, and if they win, meaning the other tribes, they win, then I'm finished and Quraysh is happy. And if I win, then they don't realize my victory is their victory. I am a Qurashi. So they can just enter Islam. So in either case, if I win or I lose, in either case, Quraysh wins. But if they insist that no, it must be that they are going to fight themselves, then what do they think? ماذا تظن قريش والله إني لا أزال أجاهدهم على الذي بعثني الله له حتى يظهره الله له أو تنفرد هذه السالفة. Because I swear by Allah that I'll continue to fight them upon what Allah has sent me until Allah allows for that to overcome, meaning the truth, or until one of the two parts of my neck is gone. And so the salifa was a part of the neck you have on your right and on your left. The Arabs would say when you only have one part of your neck left, meaning that obviously you've been hit, there's only one part of your neck, means you've died. And so until I pass, or until Allah decides for that. And so he asked for consultation from the companions, and he said, tell me, what do you think we should do? Now obviously this is an extremely delicate moment, so some of the companions said, Ya Rasulullah, we should go and we should attack not just the Quraysh, but before the Quraysh, because Busr had said that it's not just Quraysh, they're Ahabish, meaning all of these tribes that are around Mecca, they've come together with them. These scattered tribes, we can surprise attack their villages. Let's go and attack their villages. Their women are there, their children are there. Let's go attack them. But Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he said, Ya Rasulullah, we didn't come for war. And we came to do Umrah. So let us stick to our goal. We will go for Umrah. We'll go for the house of Allah. If someone comes in between us, then sure, we'll stop and we'll fight them. But otherwise, we're not here to fight. We don't want it to be said that we're here to fight. And the Prophet ﷺ, he took Abu Bakr's opinion. And this actually shows that the Prophet ﷺ, if he wanted war or if he was bloodthirsty, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, he'd go for that first option. Because you can kill and pillage, but he didn't. And he specifically went with the option that is more peaceful, that is going to bring about something better. And it also shows how the Prophet ﷺ is seeking mashwara and seeking consultation even at such a delicate moment. Because if the companions, he knows, if their hearts, they're humans, if their hearts aren't with the decision, it's going to be very difficult. And so he's ensuring that they're involved. And once they decide that, they head out. And here, Khalid ibn al-Walid, they're going to eventually have to face Khalid ibn al-Walid, or they'll have to try to figure out some way to avoid him. And we'll stop here because time is up, inshallah, and we'll continue from here next week, inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.